Good morning and welcome to our 210th weekly webcast. Now, if this is the first time you're joining us, welcome. If you've been with us before, welcome back. So the way this call works is this is an AMA. You can ask me anything like on Reddit. You can ask me business questions. You can ask me career questions. You can ask me finance, investing questions, anything you want. And my humble goal here is to help you take your career or your portfolio or your understanding of business or your startup to the next level. So without further ado, let's begin, and please continue to type your questions. And once there's no more questions, towards the end of this call, what I'll do is I'll open up Zoom if you're interested in speaking with everybody live here. Now I'm going to answer a couple of questions here, and I'm going to teach you some incredible tips on how to sell anything, meaning how to sell yourself to get a job, how to sell a product, a service, how to get a promotion, how to get a raise. I've got some very simple tips, and I hope you enjoy them. All right, let's get to it. First up, I've got Ray. Ray wrote, hey, Chris, hey, man. Isn't it too risky to have 80% of your assets in an online broker platform as IBKR, for example, in case of identity theft or some hacker attacks? Yeah. So I would say that the more legitimate ones like Fidelity or Bank of America or any large bank for that matter are quite safe for you. Now, depending on what country people are in, you have to make sure that you understand how much your government insures the money you have in a bank. So in the United States, I think it's about $250,000. And so a lot of people that have over $250K in the US, they keep their money in multiple banks. But I wouldn't worry about a big brokerage firm like a Fidelity, for example, going belly up. What we've seen with FTX is more a cryptocurrency issue. I've said this before, 95% of cryptos are scams. I still own 4, and I'm about to start buying more for the first time in a long, long time. The issue with FTX, for those of you following the story, is that they were located offshore in Bermuda, and also they didn't have a great auditor. So whenever you invest in any publicly traded company, or any company for that matter, make sure that they have an auditor from a top 4 firm, like a Deloitte or Ernst & Young or PricewaterhouseCoopers. Always, always, always. And what's happened with FTX is similar to what happened with Bernard Madoff. And I'm going to show you a prop here, as always, from Bernard Madoff's firm. And so for those of you not familiar with Bernard Madoff, what he did was he ran a Ponzi scheme, which is kind of like what FTX is. And so he raised a ton of money from people over the years. He lied about performance, which allowed him to raise more money. But as long as the stock market was going up, he was fine with that. But it was all fraud. So right here, I'll get closer so you can see this a bit better. This is a phony statement from Bernard Madoff. And I blacked out the name of the person who had this account here. All the stocks that this person owned right here. Now, I knew all along that Bernard Madoff was a scam because, you know, his name is Madoff. He made off. Sorry, that was awful. But what happened with Madoff was in 2008, when we were within 24 hours of bank machines not working, what happened was a lot of people tried to redeem from Madoff's asset management firm, and he didn't have enough money to pay them. And that's what's happened kind of with FTX as well. A lot of cryptos have gone down in value, and a lot of crypto exchanges have started to go bankrupt. And so a lot of people have started taking their money out of FTX, which basically left the emperor with no clothes, so to speak. And they couldn't give back some of the cryptos because they lied about certain transactions. So what should you do about this? Well, number one, if you own any cryptos, please, 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 and I'm going to get down on my knees and say this because I do care. Hi there. Please. I want you to put all of your cryptos in a cold storage wallet, not a hot wallet. A cold storage wallet is like a USB token made by companies like Ledger Nano or Trezor. And don't order these from Amazon. Okay, I know they're cheaper on Amazon, but they could be tampered with. Buy it directly from the source, meaning Trezor or Ledger Nano. Don't leave your money in hot wallets, meaning on Coinbase. A hot wallet is a software-based wallet. Basically, you need power for it to work always. Always keep it in a cold storage wallet. Okay, let me get to the next question here before I talk about how to sell anything. All right, next up we got Alex P. Hey, Alex, how are you, man? Alex wrote, hey, Chris, hope the time off with your family was fantastic. It was great, thank you. And I hope you all that celebrate Thanksgiving had a great Thanksgiving. Black Friday sales were up 12% year over year, which is good. However, inflation is about 10% or has been. So from an organic growth perspective, sales were only up 2% year over year, and more people shop online anyway. For those of you overseas that aren't familiar with why it's called Black Friday, it's called this because in the United States, most retail companies lose money, meaning they're in the red all year long. And then they break even towards the end of November. They go from being in the red to in the black. That's how tough retail is. Very difficult, yeah. And Alex wrote here, I'm looking to buy precious metals next year in 2023. What is the best service to use to obtain them? So I always recommend buying ETFs if you want to buy precious metals. And I'll show you how to buy gold as well as silver ETFs right now. And the great thing about using ETFs, and here are my slides for I'm going to teach you soon. The great thing about using ETFs is that you know it's real gold and you know it's real silver if it's a reputable company you're buying it from. I'm buying time here until finance.yahoo.com loads. Here we go. We're good. So what I do in my biggest position in 2008 and alongside my hedge fund was ticker GLD. Okay. So this here is gold. Okay. So before you buy any ETF though, okay, you always want to look at the fees. So if we look here at the profile, we'll see the fees here are about 0.4%. That means for every $100 that you put into gold, GLD, you're going to pay 40 cents in fees per year, which is not that bad. Okay. Another thing you can do is you can buy SLV. Okay. An SLV, this is an iShares Silver Trust. And this is just like buying silver as well. The fees are probably a bit higher here because silver is not as liquid as gold for this ETF. That's right. So here it's 50 cents in fees per year for every $100. So I would take a look at copper here if you want to. Copper ETF, just do a search on it. You'll find it any commodities. That's the best way to do it. Now, what I don't recommend doing that a lot of people do, but you can get in trouble for this. Now I have to say it. A lot of people will go into certain areas in big cities and buy gold and they'll pay cash. Then what they'll do is they'll put that gold in a safety deposit box. And then when gold goes up a lot, they'll sell it back for cash and they won't claim taxes. Don't do that. I shouldn't even mention that. Yeah. Okay. And I don't do that. All right, next up, Alex P. wrote, also, I'll be asking on Saturday, and when I'm done getting my powder run, I'll turn to my father and say, that's what I'm talking about. That's right. That's how you say about. It's Canadian English, my people. Yeah. And Alex is from Canada. Alex P. Keaton. All right, next up, J&M wrote, have you read the book, The Psychology of Money by Morgan Housel? I have not, but the way I read all my books is either on Audible or I subscribe to an app. And I'm not sponsored. I never will be by anybody. I'm not sponsored by Qatar either. This was given to me by one of my great students named Paul Brau in Barcelona. But what I recommend is Blinkist. Okay, so you download the app called Blink IST. And I think it's like $99 a year. It's expensive. But they summarize all books, all business books and important books to help your career. They summarize them in about 10 to 15 minutes. The only issue I have with Blinkist is the author doesn't always read the books. All right, next up, we've got Zoralina, who's from France but lives in Ontario, Canada. She's in my Silver MBA program. Zoralina wrote, good morning, Chris. I missed you last week. Hope you had a great Thanksgiving with your family. Thank you. I did. Thank you. And then last question I've got here, and then I'll move on to teaching you guys about how to sell anything. I've got is from Mike Flynn. Mike wrote, hi, Chris. Do you think that soon governments will step in and heavily regulate cryptos or even outlaw them, making them worthless? It all depends. If you're a very left-wing socialist country or communist country, you're going to outlaw them because the biggest threat to national security is if you can't use your own currency to raise money for bonds, etc. I think the more right-wing countries are going to regulate them. Right? So I think the United States, they're certainly going to regulate them. They won't regulate them as commodities anymore. I think they're going to regulate them more so as equities. And what that means is this. It means that cryptocurrencies will probably be regulated and they'll have oversight from the SEC, the Securities and Exchange Commission, and not the Chicago Board of Options, okay, or the options exchanges. And that's important because there's much better disclosure when it comes to securities being regulated by the SEC. And I'll give you a great example of this. So before you buy any stock, you can read an S1 filing. You can always go to sec.gov. And the SEC is great most of the time because what they do is before you invest in anything, the investment bankers and lawyers have to create these big financial documents. Now, when it comes to cryptos are regulated not by governments, but by the laws of mathematics, if at all. And so there's really not much due diligence you can do, which is why I teach all my students 49 steps on how to analyze cryptocurrencies in my MBA degree program. Go to harounmba.com for more details. So I do think eventually there is going to be regulation. And I think cryptos will go up when that happens because it's a sign that the U.S. government, for example, is not going to outlaw them. I do think, and I have said this before, that what El Salvador has done by embracing Bitcoin as their only currency is really fiscally irresponsible. You can't bet the future of a company on that. Cryptos will matter in the long run, but they're very dangerous. I don't recommend anybody have more than 5% of their net worth in any cryptos, okay, in cryptos in general, and don't have more than 0.5% of your net worth in a single crypto. Okay, so from a portfolio allocation perspective, you got to be really, really careful. All right, let's move on now to keep typing your questions. What we're going to do is I'm going to try something different here. I'm actually going to teach live. This will be fun, man. Let's do this. All right, and I think we're good to go. Test, check. Okay, good. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to teach you how to sell anything. And sales is the most important skill there is in business. Okay, that's me buying time trying to set everything up here on this screen, which you guys can't see. Okay, let's do it. Today, I'm going to teach you how to sell anything. For example, a student of mine asked me to sell him this pen. He said, Chris, sell me this pen. So here's my sales pitch on selling a pen. You ready? Pay close attention, please. It's an NFT. Terrible dad humor. I'm so sorry. But when was the last time somebody mentioned NFT? Right? As interest rates go up, speculative assets go down. That's why people don't talk about NFT. Manas, you're right. I did say it's an NFT. The problem with my humor is I repeat my humor. Yeah. All right. So thanks for joining this call. Now you know how to sell. All right. Now what I'm going to do is we're going to have a lot of fun in this seminar, and I'm going to have a workbook for you to download as well. And I promise you this will help you materially with your career. All right, so by the end of this webcast here, you're going to learn how to sell anything in order to take your business or career to the next level. And you'll also learn how to sell yourself so you can get the job of your dreams by following your passion. And lastly, you're going to learn how to sell yourself to your boss so you can get a raise or a promotion. So today what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about 49 tips. Here we go. Please work. There you go. I'm going to talk about 49 tips on how to sell. And I promise you, that using some or many of the tips that I'm going to mention here will materially help you with your career. Now, I've humbly raised and managed over $1 billion in my career using a lot of the tips that I'm going to give you here. I've also started many companies, and I've been promoted humbly many times when I worked for other people using the tips I'm going to teach you today. And the most important thing about business is networking and sales. And unfortunately, they don't teach you this stuff in MBA schools. In my MBA program, which you can check out at harounmba.com, I teach all this and much, much more. Okay, let's get started. Let's talk about 49 tips on how to materially improve your ability to sell. Now, what I've done is I've grouped these 49 tips into 3 categories as follows. Category 1 is called how to use sales psychology in order to sell more. The second category of 3 is how to use technology and communication best practices to sell more. And then category number 3 is how to price your product in order to sell more. So what I want you to do, please, is I want you to go to this website right here. Okay, I want you to go to harouneducation.com/sell anything. Okay, and I want you to download a workbook for today's class in either Word, Google Docs, or PDF format, as we're going to do some really fun exercises together. Now, all 3 workbooks have the exact same content. And so let me show you how to download that here really, really quickly. Okay, so what you do is you go to harounemba.com or Haroun Education, same thing, /sell anything, all lowercase, okay? And you can download the workbooks here. All right, let me get back to my slides now. It's fun doing this live, man. All right, now if you use Google Docs, please make a copy of the document so you don't need to request access from me. Now in the workbooks, you'll see here, below each tip that I teach of the 49 tips, you can write down, if you want, how you might use the tip during your next informational interview, or during your next networking or customer meeting, or your next meeting with your boss when you ask for a raise, or during the next meeting you have with a customer. And there's also some exercises that you can do for homework later on today to help you take your sales game to the next level. So let's talk about category number 1, which deals with how to use sales psychology in order to sell more. All right, tip number 1 is smile and talk business later. You never get a second chance to make a first impression. And just remember, go back in time. Remember that person that you met once and you were in a very serious mood and not in a social mood. And that really set the tone of the entire business relationship, or I should say lack thereof, with that person. Now, a rookie mistake in business and in sales is to be too serious and start talking about business or the reason for your meeting right away. If you do that, then you're going to actually lose that priceless chance of bonding with them in order to set a perfect first impression. So smile. And Mother Teresa, I love her, she once said, "Let us always meet each other with a smile, for the smile is the beginning of love." So in this very first meeting you have, what do you talk about? Well, you can go to their Twitter profile and see who they follow. If they follow baseball, then you can find a way to talk about baseball. If they follow comedians or entertainers, bring that up in a natural and non-obvious way, of course. And if they follow something that you're passionate about, you can also bring that up. What you can also do is you can go to their LinkedIn profile and see if you have any connections in common with them, or check out who they follow on LinkedIn, or what groups they're in on LinkedIn, or something like that. And I promise you, you'll find something in common with them. Now, if you can't do this, then before you're meeting with them, please read the top news websites so you can familiarize yourself with current events and just talk about that during your first meeting with them. And your best customers can become great friends. So get to know them really well before conducting business. Ask them where they're from and what they love in life. Create a personal bond with them. People love talking about themselves. And don't talk about business, please, until you get to know your customer or business partners. Relationships are always more important than product knowledge. And your network is your net worth, as we all know. So this is a great segue for number 2, which is helping them achieve their goals by realizing that 3 things usually motivate people in business. Number 1, they want to make more money. Number 2, they want to get promoted. And 3, as my son used to say, they want to enjoy what they do. So if it's a salesperson that you're meeting with, network and meet with potential customers. And then during the meeting with a customer that works in sales, you can give them a 1-pager with the names of, say, 5 people that you networked with over LinkedIn that might become customers of the salespeople that you're meeting with. And if that sounds like a lot of work, I want you to ask yourself this: how badly do you want this customer or this job? Now, if it's someone you're about to meet with that works in operations or human resources, then you can do research on a new product or app or website that can help them much more efficiently with their job. So I always want you to go into a meeting with a philosophy of helping, okay? Give and you'll receive. It's prophetic and it's been true since the beginning of time. And give generously with your heart too when it comes to helping others. It pays off in the long run, I promise you. All right, tip number 3, I want you to over-prepare for all meetings. If your competition likely only spends 5 hours preparing for a meeting, then spend 50 hours preparing. If your competition spends 10 hours preparing for a meeting, spend 100 hours. Every battle is won before it's been fought. So just be ready. And bring many exhibits to meetings and leave them in your briefcase. And you can pull them out of your briefcase if you need to show them exhibits. Yeah. And you can put your resume actually on the other side of that piece of paper and the exhibits on the other side if you want. And I've done this many times in interviews, and I've often gotten hired because of this. And you got to anticipate the questions the interviewer asks you before the interview too. So when I had my interviews at Goldman Sachs 8 million years ago, I completely over-prepared. I wrote down literally more than 100 questions I thought they might ask me. And then I recorded myself with a tape recorder back then, answering the questions. Did my voice sound too monotone? Did I sound way too confident? Did I sound nervous? No way. And were my answers short enough? And did my answers sound interesting and engaging, etc.? Okay, let's talk about tip number 4. And by the way, if you guys have questions about these tips as I go through them, please type your questions. Or if you have other tips to share with everybody else from an engagement perspective, please let me know. And thank you. All right, tip number 4 is body language. In addition to smiling, try not to cross your arms, because this subliminally indicates that you're not as open-minded. Also, when it comes to eye contact, I read this amazing book by Larry King, God bless him, he passed away, and he had the #1 interview show on CNN for decades. But in his book, Larry King said, when it comes to eye contact, every now and then, if you're meeting in person, I want you to look away, okay? Look left, look right, for example, because it's less intimidating than making eye contact the whole time. And of course, never, ever, 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 ever look over somebody's head, as it appears really intimidating as well. And when you brag about your accomplishments, which you have to do in an interview, you can look down when you tell them that you humbly were the top performing salesperson at your company, for example. And I want you to use your hands as well, as I find that it makes you sound more passionate about what you're talking about, because your delivery is so important, man. And as Maya Angelou said, people might not remember what you said, but they'll never forget the way you made them feel. All right, let's talk about clothing and cosmetics. So be the woman or man you want to become. And the way you carry yourself is the way others are going to treat you as well. And so people will respect you if you take the time to dress well. And dress the way a person would one level above you in your job, okay? So before you get promoted, you have to actually prove that you can do the job one level above you. And the way you dress is important, as strange as that sounds. And if you take time to look good, people will think you're confident and hence competent. Remember, confidence leads to perceived competence. And an executive or a salesperson that dresses like a slob is, of course, perceived to be less reliable, dependable, and successful. And if you don't know what to wear for a job interview or an informational meeting, what you can do is you can go to the company's website and look at a picture of what they're wearing. Alternatively, what you can do is you can go directly to LinkedIn and look at profile pictures of the people that are going to interview you and dress in line with their style. Okay, so dress well and excel. Now, in terms of cosmetics, because we all use Zoom a lot for obvious reasons, I'm going to give you some tips on how to look more presentable. And by the way, one of my great students from my Platinum MBA program that started in June, Evelyn, she once told me that, Chris, a great Zoom presence will do just as much for your career as a great Italian suit will do. Okay, so all actors, okay, and all people on television wear makeup in order to reduce, how shiny you look. And my wife, Christine, actually helped me out a lot with this. So before you do an online meeting, you put on powder like this so you don't look like you're perspiring or shiny. And I didn't know this, but when I went to the drugstore to get powder, the woman at the store helped me to find the powder color that matches my skin color. And this is all new to me, but I promise you that this helps you tremendously. So what you do is you just go like this and you wipe it on. It's almost empty though, because it takes 8 years to put it on my nose every day because it's so big. All right. Now, in terms of your voice, 30 minutes before I go live on Webcast, I use what's called vocal zone pastilles to make me sound more awake, which works sometimes. I also use this here, okay? If you're losing your voice, you can use this. It's called Voice 37, and opera singers and rock singers use this as well. Throat 37. It's worth it. And all this, yes, it's a big investment, but one perfect meeting could change your life. Also, you want to keep the camera at eye level, okay? And get a Post-it note if you want to, and draw a smiley face and stick it right below the monitor. So it'll make you smile more. It works, as silly as it sounds. Try it. Try drawing a smiley face right now and notice that you're smiling. All right, tip number 6 is to always be 5 minutes early, especially for Zoom meetings. And the person conducting the Zoom meeting is going to let you in when the meeting starts, but they're going to see that you are early, which sets an amazing first impression. Tip number 7 Transparency builds trust. I'm always 100% transparent with all my students about everything. I don't take any sponsorships, as you know. All that matters to me is my students and not corporations. But always be 100% transparent in business, especially with the risks of the product or service you're selling. So I tell my investors what the risks are of investing in my products or services within 5 minutes of our first meeting once we start talking about what I'm selling. It's the right and ethical thing to do. It also leads to trust, which is of paramount importance in business. Disclose all risks to your clients or prospective clients before doing business with them. Okay, next up, we've got testimonials. Testimonials help you sell more. Okay, if you feel uncomfortable bragging about yourself, have big companies do it for you. You can ask them for testimonials. And many large customers, if you can, that use your products or services will write you testimonials as well, which puts you on the map. And I've also done this with a lot of video testimonials from my customers here in my MBA program. Just ask, because it costs you nothing. And make sure to get customers or business partners to write you recommendations too, of course, on LinkedIn. Very important. Okay, let's move on to tip number 9, which is a sense of urgency. So when you're selling, and you've all seen this with Black Friday, but when you're selling, create a sense of urgency, because this helps you to sell the product, and it's the reason why Black Friday is a huge success in the United States. Tip number 10, stop talking if you think you close a sale. Meaning, if you sense that the customer is interested in buying your product or hiring you, then I want you to immediately stop selling. Because if you sell past the close, you might actually lose the sale. And so what this means is the image there on the left of the customer smiling is a customer that approves and wants to buy or hire you. But if I'm the buyer of your product and I want to buy from you or hire you, but you keep selling or overselling, then from a psychology perspective, I start thinking, gosh, I love the product or this person, but they won't stop selling. Am I missing something? I'm not buying. All right, number 11, I want you to understand customer reservations, meaning focus on what is stopping the customer from buying your product or hiring you, and address those issues before they bring it up. Be preemptive. So for example, if you're trying to get a job and you don't have experience in that field, then the person interviewing you is thinking, number 1, you're not qualified. Number 2, they don't want to take the time to train you. And number 3, they don't think you're worth the money. So when it comes to you not being qualified, I want you to focus, please, on how your unique experiences can help the company solve business problems in a unique way. So for example, if you're younger and you don't have experience, you can say that you thoroughly understand why and how younger people buy products using new distribution channels, including social media products that most companies don't use or understand. And of course, you need to give examples of this. Or if you're older and you don't have experience in the industry you're trying to get a job in, just mention how your differentiated experiences can help the company to enter new markets or sell to new customers, etc. And remember that your biggest perceived weaknesses are your biggest strengths if you sell it the right way from a customer psychology perspective. All right, tip number 12 is to give them a risk-free way to buy, meaning a 30-day 100% money-back guarantee, which is what I do, and mention that as how confident you are in the product that you're selling. Tip number 13, maintain a positive attitude, because one sale or interview can and will change your life, and you only have to be right in business one time. So please don't be discouraged because your competition is. And in every challenging situation in business, it's really important that you see challenge as an opportunity. With big risk comes big return. So yeah, you got to rise to the occasion when a crisis emerges. And try to condition yourself too, please, to embrace change and enjoy difficult situations. I know it's a weird thing to say, but I want you to enjoy difficult situations, because this is going to help you deal with the perceived stress, and then you can profit from adversity. Okay, so always ask yourself in business, what is positive about this event, and how can I enjoy and benefit from it? Now, The belief that anything is possible leads to unbelievable accomplishments. The glass is not half empty. The glass is also not half full, right? It's always full. It overfloweth with optimism, actually. Yeah. And you're never going to meet an extremely successful person with a negative attitude. Because if they didn't believe in themselves and in their goals, then they would never have been successful. And a great example of this actually is Elon Musk. You know, he's so positive. He's thinking about, yeah, we can totally colonize Mars. And he's also a contrarian. You know, he backed up the truck and bought a ton of stock in Tesla in March of 2020 when the market was at the bottom. And then he sold most of those shares in late 2021, 6 weeks ahead of the market peak in January of 22. So be a contrarian always, please. And I got to give you this great quote from Warren Buffett. He said, the New York Stock Exchange is the only store in the world where consumers sell stock when it goes on sale. All right, this is one that I love. You need Yodas. You need many Yodas, meaning mentors, in your life and in your career. And you need mentors, and you need to mentor other people in order to reinforce what your core beliefs are or your critical career sales and success factors are. Now, make sure that your Yodas, meaning mentors, are in a position that you want to be in one day. You know, are they successful professionally? Are they successful personally? Did they achieve a great work-life balance? Are some of their past accomplishments your future goals? Do you trust them? Do you enjoy their company? And can they offer you constructive criticism so that they can help you to seek continuous improvement? And people are always flattered when you ask them to mentor you. They most always say yes when you ask them. So just ask and you'll receive mentors. And they're going to help you achieve your goals in life. And I want you to mentor others too, because when one teaches, two learn. Okay. One thing I want to talk about before we go on to tip number 15 is I want you to get mentored also by assistants in your company. You know, because the assistant in your company, he or she has probably worked with their boss at many different companies. They travel together. And they understand what the drivers are in terms of what the boss is going to think about when deciding to hire to promote somebody. Very important. Okay. Next up, we've got confidence leads to perceived competence. Please don't confuse confidence with arrogance. But if you're confident and humble, people will think you are competent and likable at the same time. You know, confidence leads to great sales skills. And a lot of hedge funds I used to work at, they love hiring athletes, like former, gold medalists or, state champions, whatever, because they're very confident, right? So I want you to be an elite athlete. Okay. Now, great sales skills leads to the ability to raise money. Okay, and that comes with confidence. And the ability to raise money leads to the ability to create amazing companies. And the ability to create amazing companies leads to the ability to innovate and disrupt industries like Uber, Airbnb, etc. And you got to come across as confident when you're selling your product and service. As again, perceived confidence more often than not leads to perceived competence. I know I said that twice, but that's important. So how do you become more confident? Well, it's all up here. Just like the Rodin sculpture, I think, therefore I am. And the simple reason why people are not confident is because they care what other people think of them. And that is a recipe for career and self-sabotage. I've been there, man. So whether or not you think you can do it, you're right. And you can stop this self-sabotage right now. Because today is day one and not one day. And I'm going to show you how to boost your confidence right now. And this exercise we're going to do can change your life if you take this seriously, please. Okay. So what I want you to do is I want you to go to the workbook. Okay. So go to that website there, download the workbook. Make sure it's all lowercase, sell anything there. I want you to open your workbook and I want you to go to page 16 because we're going to do an exercise. So in this exercise that I want you to do today, please, for homework, I want you to fill in the blanks for this sentence 10 times. Ready? This is life-changing. I don't care what people think of X. For example, I don't care what people think of my career passion. Or I don't care that people I work with have more experience than me. Or I don't care what people think of who I am. Or I don't care what people think of my choices in life as, damn it, this is my life. because somebody else's opinion of you does not have to become your reality. It's a great quote. I got to say it again. Again, someone else's opinion of you does not have to become your reality. Les Brown said that. So if you get rid of all self-doubt, then you can sell yourself better. So what I want you to do is please pause this webcast if you want to, and take 10 minutes to do that exercise I just talked about. All right, let's move on now to tip number 16, which is setting goals and the goal setting workshop. So you gotta, and I say this with love in my heart, you gotta accept the fact that if you want to put your dent in the universe and start a company that sells the best products and changes the world, or if you want to be the CEO of the company you're working at, it's not hard to do unless you tell yourself it's hard. And it doesn't matter what level you're at either, as there's countless examples of people that started in the mailroom at big companies with no education, and they climb the corporate ladder in order to become CEO. Don't be negative. I promise you, you can become the CEO regardless of your educational rank at the company. Now, there's so many great examples of this. Sidney Weinberg, who's the former CEO of Goldman Sachs for decades, he started in the mailroom. So did Simon Cowell from American Idol, David Geffen, etc. Similarly, you can start any company you want to and disrupt an entire industry regardless of your education. Bill Gates, Zuckerberg, and Jobs, they didn't have university degrees. But what they have is an unquenchable thirst to leave a dent in the universe. Believe in yourself and you can accomplish any goals you want to in business. And we sometimes overestimate, I certainly do this, we sometimes overestimate what we can accomplish in a year. But we always massively underestimate what we can accomplish in a decade. So be long-term focused. There's no limits to what you can achieve in business except the ones that you personally set. It's true. And so your second homework assignment is to please go to page 18 in this workbook. And you can even pause this webcast to do it now. But go to page 18 in the workbook. And I want you to write down your 10-year goals. And I don't want you to be conservative. Remember, we often underestimate what we can accomplish in a decade. And after you write down your goals, I want you to copy all the goals you just wrote down. And I want you to paste them in your calendar and have that calendar entry repeat every single day forever. Okay, tip number 17, appealing to emotions when selling. Dale Carnegie, who's my favorite business author, Dale Carnegie said that in business, we need to understand that people are creatures of emotion and not creatures of logic. And I know it's a strange saying, but you got to appeal to your heart and to your emotions when you bond with your customers and when positioning your brand as more than just a product. Okay, the product you're selling, the brand you're selling, you got to tell yourself it appeals to emotions and it's helping improve people's lives. Really believe that if true. And you got to believe this with all your heart, because when we sell, we're here to serve other people. I'm certainly here to serve others and make their lives better with your product or the way you service them. So you got to find an emotional connection with your customers. All right, tip number 18 is I want you to turn your competitors' weaknesses into your strengths. Thoroughly research the negative aspects of your competition by reading Yelp reviews or Glassdoor.com reviews, or by reading about the weaknesses or risks in their business model by reading the annual report and other financial documents that are publicly available. Then I want you to think about how their weaknesses are your strengths when selling your product or service to customers. And you can even say that you will walk through walls for your customers in terms of customer service and value you can add, etc., and how big companies treat customers like a number. But your product is worth the premium price in gold because of your customer support. And that's how you compete with big companies. You compete on better customer service. And as Jeff Bezos said, corporate profitability and customer service are perfectly aligned in the very, very long run. A company is only as good as its customer service. All right, number 19. And I can't wait to see the next Avatar movie coming out in about 2 weeks. My whole family and I, we're going to go to a nice theater. We can get couches. You pay a couple bucks more, get couches and dinner and stuff. It's good. So tip number 19, think like the customer. I want you to spend an entire day in the mindset of the customer. Okay, kind of like an avatar. I want you to think to yourself, Would this customer buy from your competition and not from you from a psychology perspective? And then address those issues in your meeting with them. Tip number 20, sticking with the avatar theme, I want you to think like the competition. Spend an entire day in the mindset of the competition as well. So go to the Twitter profile of competing salespeople, and you're going to notice that they follow their customers, which is a great way to, maybe think about how to get customers. And this is a good segue for tip number 21, last avatar reference. Only sell to decision makers. Okay, don't waste your time with other people. Now, Sigourney Weaver was the boss, meaning the decision maker in Avatar. So don't waste your time selling to non-decision makers in a company. I want you to go right to the top or speak directly with the head of a division. Okay, you got nothing to lose and everything to gain. Tip number 22, and it is raining right now here in the Bay Area. Tip number 22, small clients are just as much work as big clients. So don't waste your time trying to get small clients. Small customers are really high maintenance. I want you to elephant hunt. And you'll find that small customers are just as much work and often more work than large customers. Why is this the case? Well, smaller customers usually have less disposable income, and as a result, they're more likely to want to return the product or pester you, and I say it with love in my heart, or pester you with too many customer support questions. Larger clients, by contrast, can be more sophisticated, so they require less customer support, and they also likely have less of their net worth invested in your product. Of course, I love all my customers the same. Okay, tip number 23, ask for the sale. And I can't tell you how many meetings I've gone to over the years with colleagues of mine in the companies I've worked at, and how I notice they don't ask for the sale. I know it sounds ridiculous. It's really counterintuitive. But you got to ask for anything in life, right? You want to get promoted, you have to ask many times. If you want to get a raise, you have to ask. And most successful business people that get promoted often and rise to the top ask to get to that level. It's very true. And you're going to get passed over for a promotion or a raise if you don't ask for it. I promise you. You need to ask for everything you want in life. Nobody's going to give it to you. No one's going to give you anything in life unless you ask for it. And your supervisor in your company should be pretty cool about this. As she or he knows that you're trying to provide for your family. They've been in that position before as well. In fact, they probably got promoted to their level because they asked more than their competition did. And if you feel very uncomfortable with this, and you should not, then I want you to phrase a question like this when you're talking to your boss, if true. I love working here, and I love the team too. Can you please let me know what I need to accomplish or what I need to what to do to add in order to get promoted or a raise? Okay, and you can even say it's expensive raising a family here in the Bay Area, wherever you live, and you want to provide for your family. Okay, and once you achieve the goals or benchmarks that your supervisor gives you in response to your question, then I want you to remind him or her of your accomplishments after you achieve them, and you will get the raise, I promise you. And it goes without saying that you should only approach your boss with this conversation when they're in a great mood or in a positive state, and likely right after they tell you that you did a good job on something. All right, we are now done with the first of three categories, okay, which covers sales psychology. Let's now move on to category number 2, which is how to use technology and communication best practices to sell much more. Tip number 24, become a thought leader and leverage the media. Okay, so why do people talk to journalists and get quoted for articles or get interviewed on podcasts or on TV? And how can you do this as well? Well, they do these interviews, of course, because of the free media exposure, which sells their products and services, etc., to the marketplace. And how can you get free publicity? Number 1, I want you to be controversial but tasteful. And number 2, become a thought leader, like the Rodin sculpture there, to build your empire. So how can you be controversial? Well, the most successful executives are constantly in the media as they see this as free advertising for their products or services. And I love watching Richard Branson or Mark Benioff on television conducting interviews because they're so inspirational. But their genius, though, is partially through leveraging the media to evangelize their companies and being controversial. And so Sir Richard Branson, he did this by literally, where's my Coca-Cola prop? Richard Branson did this by literally driving a tank through New York City's Times Square when he declared war on Coca-Cola with his Virgin Cola brand. Another great example of this is Mark Benioff, getting any reason he can to get interviewed and explain why traditional client-server software products are dead and why cloud computing and Salesforce are revolutionary productivity tools. So I want you to embrace the media. Okay, and let me just go off script for a second and talk about Tesla and Elon Musk. Have you ever seen a Tesla commercial? Neither have I. Most companies spend 10% of their annual revenue on advertising. Coca-Cola, they have $40 billion in annual revenue, and they spend 10% or $4 billion on advertising. So think about what Elon Musk has done with Twitter, buying Twitter for 40 or 50 billion. That's like 10 years of advertising for him. He's controversial. Controversy sells, but you got to be tasteful. All right, next up, the next way to become a thought leader is to think like a thought leader and share your opinions on the sector you're most passionate about. And you can do this for free by publishing a LinkedIn article every single week. Okay, and you got to be consistent with this, though, please, and understand it's a marathon and not a sprint. And your competition might try to do this, but they're going to give up. And I promise you that if you do this enough times, meaning write articles on LinkedIn, for example, then you're going to get journalists contacting you and asking you for quotes in articles they write. It's going to feel lonely at first, I promise you. Who cares? But you're not going to get many views or likes, but don't let that stop you, as we know that Rome wasn't built in a day. Okay, and once you write a bunch of articles, so I did this for 2 years on LinkedIn. Once you write one article per week for 2 years, then you've got about 100 chapters to put into your book, which you can publish for free using my free template, which you can get from my website, which is harounmba.com/writebook, all lowercase. harounmba.com/writebook. Okay. It works though. And you can repurpose your content that way as well. And don't forget that people like Gary Vaynerchuk, like in the early days, he was on so many podcast interviews with 2 people on them, whatever. You can look at his earlier YouTube videos. They're brutal, not as bad as my earlier ones. But it takes time. And people said, Gary, what's it like to be an overnight success? And he's like, what are you talking about? I'm a 45-year overnight success. But if you write this book, then you can go to interviews or meetings with customers and give them a copy of your book. And if you think that's too much work, then ask yourself, how badly do you want this customer or the job you're interviewing for? It works, I promise you. It takes time. It's a marathon, not a sprint. This is a good segue for tip number 25, which is repurposing your content. Okay. I want you to work smarter and not harder when it comes to you being a thought leader and publishing content. For example, Nintendo's been repurposing their older content, meaning older Mario and Zelda games, on their new platforms for years. Okay, just do that. It helps you work smarter, not harder. All right, number 26. The carrot and the CTA mean the call to action. So in all of your social media content, there has to be a carrot or a call to action, which is like asking them for a sale. And the carrot is something you give away, and the call to action is where you click or what to do next. Like if you visit a web page, and of course on YouTube you can put cards in the corner. But what you can do is you can tell people at the end of a YouTube video to go to your website to download a book. Okay, and that's what I've done, and that's how many of you know me as well. Yeah. All right, tip number 27. Email is still the gold standard for getting customers. So how do you start? How do you start and manage and build your email list? Well, you want to use social media to drive traffic to your website so people can download your book for free, for example. And what you do is you ask them for their email, and then they download the book. Okay. Tip number 28, plugins and automation helps you work smarter and not harder. Don't waste your time coding or hiring people to code for your website when you can use automation through plugins. It's easy and cheap. And anything repetitive you have in your company, try to use software automation, which saves you a ton on labor costs. I've never had an assistant, I love using technology to automate everything. All right, tip number 29, crutch words and frameworks. And I got to get this crutch here, so this one is important. I love teaching with props. Okay, crutch words and frameworks. So when you're in a meeting trying to sell something, or when you're in an interview, you can buy time by using structured frameworks and crutch words to answer questions. So for example, if I'm asked in an interview, what are my thoughts on a business topic? I can say, well, using the SWOT, SWOT analysis, I'll discuss the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. Let me kick it off with the strengths, which are blah, blah, blah. In terms of the weaknesses, blah, blah, blah. Moving on to the opportunities, blah, blah, blah. And lastly, the threats, blah, blah, blah. Now, I use what I call crutch or transition words there when I said also in terms of, moving on to. Okay, and when you listen to the news on the radio, they do this as well. When they talk about the next story, they'll say in terms of, moving on to, and finally. Okay, so these are transition words. And the structure of frameworks and crutch words buys you time as well, okay, to think. It makes you come across as more polished and confident when selling. This stuff works, I promise you. Okay. All right, number 30. Your LinkedIn profile sells you. Now, before people take meetings with you, they're going to look at your LinkedIn profile, of course. So make sure your LinkedIn profile is perfect, which I help my students with in my MBA program. And I promise you that if you have a polished LinkedIn profile, then you're going to get many more interviews and meetings with customers. And in my MBA degree program, which you can learn about at harounmba.com, in my Platinum MBA, and the next Platinum and Gold MBA we're launching January 30th, if you join the Platinum MBA, I will write your entire summary section, your LinkedIn profile with you from scratch. It's fun too. All right, moving on to tip number 31. Be creative when selling. So here's 3 examples. Okay, be creative. And use props too. Number 1. I remember one time I worked in venture capital, and a lot of people wanted to get meetings with me. Humbly, it's just the way it is in VC, because I worked in VC. And what happened was there was these entrepreneurs from France, and they mailed me this big package, and I opened it up, and it was a poster. It was a wanted poster. Like, instead of saying wanted dead or alive, it was a picture of me with a cowboy hat on, and it said wanted meeting with Chris Haroun, or Haroun, however the hell you pronounce that. And it was so innovative that I actually took the meeting with them. Okay. Example number 2. I remember I had one of my students reached out to me, and in the subject line, he wrote, "Did you see the Blue Jays game last night?" And I'm a big Toronto Blue Jays fan. So anyways, it was kind of a catchy, personalized email. He probably went to my Twitter profile and saw that I followed a lot of Toronto Blue Jays. Okay, example number 3. There was a woman that works in sales 2 years ago. She got a meeting with me because she emailed me and said, "Chris, time for a coffee, ... And I opened it up, and she was there at Starbucks holding a cup that said Chris on it. Yeah, I took the meeting. It was interesting. All right, tip number 32, less is more. Now, Steve Jobs was the quintessential communicator and entrepreneur. He firmly believed that for a product or an idea to be widely adopted, it needed to have a very simplistic design. Okay, and the iPhone and iPad only have one button, okay, on the side, kind of, yeah. And his presentations usually had 3 bullet points. Actually, that's not true. All iPhones had one button when he was alive running the company up until he passed away in 2011. But his presentations, they usually only have 3 bullet points or 3 images per slide, and that's all. And pretend that in each message that you send, that each word costs you $100 to write. And with this in mind, you'll definitely embrace the winning methodology of less is more. All right, number 33. How to become more confident when selling. Now, Steve Jobs would not have been successful without realizing one simple secret in life, which is this. Everything around you that you call life was made by people that are no smarter than you. And once you realize this, you'll never be the same again. And that's how I end all my webcasts, with that video I licensed from the Silicon Valley Historical Association. Okay, tip number 34. is all I heard was not no. Now, I'm very good friends with a CEO who I believe is the best salesperson ever. And he's very similar to Benioff. Okay, and all CEOs are great salespeople, of course. And the best salespeople are relentless when selling. They are like a pit bull on a pork chop. They keep selling until the customer seems interested, or better yet, they keep selling until until they hear no. Okay, and you have not failed at selling your product or service or yourself until the prospect says no. So until then, keep trying different angles to sell your product or service, and be creative, and don't ever give up on this lead until she or he says no. Until then, all you heard was not no. Tip number 35. I love this one. Treat people like celebrities and celebrities like people. I once met this guy that was the head of government sales at IBM. And this person actually, before that, he worked in the White House for President Bush in the early 1990s, Bush Sr. And during my dinner with him, I asked him, what made President Bush Sr. so successful? And he said, well, for President Bush, as it is with all superb politicians, it comes down to having superb relationships. And he told me that President Bush treated people like celebrities and celebrities like people. So learn as much as you can about people you meet by asking them questions. Let them talk about themselves and smile. And remember their names too. People love talking about themselves, and they really appreciate it when you use their name often in conversation. And so treat all people you meet in business like good lifelong friends. Don't jump right into business topics in a conversation. Tip number 36, avoid those people. Sales is really tough because you get rejected a lot, and I want you to avoid hanging out with negative people. Don't let the bastards get you down. That's right. If you can, going forward, disassociate yourself with negative people. Tip number 37, that person speaks gooder than me. Don't get fooled by assuming that somebody in business is smarter than you because they speak gooder than you. They might have been born with a silver spoon in their mouth, and they might have gotten into Harvard Business School, HBS, because one of their relatives went there. Remember, 2/3 of HBS is BS. Just kidding, sort of. Maybe 2/3 of Haroun Business School is, I don't know. But always remember that you earned your way to where you are today. And the fact that some people speak more eloquently than you do is not a reflection of them having a higher intelligence or higher IQ. Au contraire. They're likely more insecure than you are. And unfortunately, in business, confidence leads to perceived competence. Tip number 38, your Alma matters. So people don't leverage schools that they attended enough. I have thousands of people that have taken my MBA degree program, and they're amazing at networking with each other, as I have MBA students all over the world. And the friends that you make in school are often more beneficial to you and your career than what you actually learn in school. It's true. So make sure to leverage your school alumni network often, and you'll be amazed how many doors are opened using this best practice. And all universities have local alumni-sponsored events. And if you're not aware of them, just call your alumni office and ask them for details on your local alumni club. And if one doesn't exist, then here's a golden opportunity to start one. And please also use LinkedIn often to leverage your golden alumni network, especially if you live more than a few hundred miles from the school you attended. And it's easy to get meetings with alumni using LinkedIn InMails, which I teach about in my MBA program in more detail. Tip number 39, you are never as nervous as you sound. At times when we meet with senior executives or make presentations, we feel nervous. Don't worry, because 99.9% of the time, you never look or sound nervous at all. And this should put you at ease as well. In fact, when you condition yourself to enjoy presenting, like I'm doing now, I'm loving this. When you condition yourself to enjoy presenting or meeting with senior executives, you, of course, don't feel nervous at all. And just be yourself. And tell yourself you really enjoy the company of the audience. Pretend they are lifelong friends or family members, and they love you, and they want nothing more than for you to be extremely successful. And what I tell myself when I'm worried about business, which never happens as much as before, I tell myself this: God already knows what's going to happen, which puts me at ease. It's not work that kills us, it's worry. Things are never as bad as they seem. Winston Churchill once said, I once met a man on his deathbed who talked about all the worries he had in his life, none of which came true. We worry way too much. Yeah. And whenever you worry about something in business, your competition's worried too. I want you to be happy about it and embrace it. And you might not understand this right now if you failed in business, but many years from now, you might look back and say, thank God that happened. Thank God that happened. Yeah. All right. Number 40, politics when selling. Okay. Let me get that annoying cursor out of the way. Politics when selling. Most of us know that this is common sense, but it's worth discussing briefly. If half a country votes for X candidate and the other half votes for Y candidate, then disclosing your political preference might piss off 50% of your peers. I don't know what half. So don't talk about politics, and don't put your political affiliation online or on your LinkedIn profile, and don't follow any politicians, please, on LinkedIn. Yeah. Okay. Tip number 41. Here we go. Brag more, tastefully. If you don't tell people about your successes, they will never know. Nobody's going to help you advance in your career. You got to help yourself. And if you don't feel comfortable doing this, then ask people to write positive reviews for you on LinkedIn. Tip number 42. We're almost done. Tip number 42. Ask your customer or boss, how am I doing? Many times. And I've had many friends in the companies that I've worked at that have gotten fired. Now, they could have avoided this by implementing the career best practice of meeting every month or two with their supervisor and asking for feedback. And you got to ask for feedback from your boss in a one-on-one setting often. And she or he will help you. They'll guide you to stay on the path to success. And just ask them, what do you need to do to add value, more value to the team? Or what do you need to accomplish before getting promoted or a raise? And if you don't ask for feedback often, then communication will break down and you could lose your job. And most people are surprised when they get fired. Okay? Over communicate when it comes to this topic. All right, number 43, be honest and speak from the heart. People love honesty and humility. When presenting or participating in meetings, I want you to be yourself and speak right from the heart. Throw out that script. Don't be artificial. Be you. Number 44, listen. Unless you're Vincent Van Gogh, you got to go like this. It's awful humor, sorry. Listen. Of course, you should listen to your customer and get them to talk more than you. But I want to talk about listening to somebody more important than your customer. Behind almost every single successful business person is a great spouse. You're a team, and you've likely only gotten to where you are in life because of their mentoring. So listen to them and thank them often. And I often read my emails I'm composing to my wife, Christine, before sending them, and her feedback always rocks. All right, we are now done with categories 1 and 2, which were about psychology of sales and how to communicate. The third and final category, it's a short one, is how to price your product in order to sell more. Tip number 45, upselling and cross-selling. Your best source of getting more customers is often right in front of you, and quite often you don't even notice it. Your best customers are your existing customers. A happy customer of yours can cross-sell your product to other customers if you ask. And I have an affiliate program as well. So when students sell my MBA, they get 30% of all the profits. Yeah. Also, all business models have to have a freemium product, meaning a free product, and your existing freemium customers, if they're getting value out of your free product, you can upsell your more expensive products to them. You can even use retargeting products from companies like AdRoll to help you do this. Couple more. Tip number 46, free trials. This is something I have experimented with that works incredibly well, humbly. In order to improve your conversion rates from free to paid customers, you have to ask them to put in your credit card for a free 7-day trial, for example, and then you can send them several emails telling them that they can cancel within 7 days. I also have experimented with, and many of you might have seen it on my website, harounmba.com, a pop-up that sells you a course for 99 cents. And then the credit card, I have your credit card, and then it says right at checkout, do you also want to buy this? Okay. Tip number 47, payment and subscription plans. If the sticker shock of the pricing of your product is too high, then offer a payment plan where you charge a bit more than the one payment plan offering. Number 48, 100% money back guarantee. It's impossible to compete online without offering a risk-free 100% money back guarantee, which is what I've always done and I will always do. Okay. You need to make it as easy as possible for customers to sign up, or as Tony Robbins calls it, you got to have a ridiculous offer. Tip number 49, charm pricing. Charm pricing means using the numbers 9.99 instead of selling something for, say, $10. If you price it at $9.99, this leads to higher conversions. And with this in mind, I'm going to stop here, okay, at my 49 tips. Please let me know if you have any questions. Thank you. All right, and I'm going to get back into full screen Chris mode and get a sip of coffee. And what you can't see behind the scenes is that I have an ad block plugin that just popped up, so I can't see something here. So give me 1 second. Okay, we're good to go. All right, let's do this. All right. Okay. All right, I'll kick it off here with Manas, who wrote here, go messy Haroun. Messy with a Y, not an I. My dear mentor, what a beautiful jersey. Hope Messi wins the cup. How are you doing this week? Happy Thanksgiving a lot. And let's get on the roof. That's how Canadians say it, roof. Yeah. My son's and I, we've been playing FIFA. FIFA 23, which downloaded the PS5. Dude, they nailed the faces. It looks almost 100% realistic. Okay, next up, question is, what do you think of FedCoin? I don't know much about it. I know that in India, for example, they're just releasing now, I guess, a digital version of the rupee. The whole world is watching closely to see how this works out. I think the United States will be one of the last countries to do it, though, because they have a monopoly. And monopolists, they don't need to innovate. U.S. dollars kind of monopoly. Yeah. All right, next up, Craig. Hey, Craig. Craig wrote, good morning, Chris. Is it true that life insurance is an investment? I keep seeing financial gurus popping up all over YouTube saying life insurance is an investment. So the question is it true that life insurance is an investment? It is, but please don't do it. And here's why. I only want you to buy stocks from the exchanges. Why would you buy food from, I don't know, IBM? So there's always a scam there because there are hidden fees. And what I want you to do is, when you get on the customer support hotline with the insurance executive or customer support, I want you to ask them, what are the fees? Okay. And then after they tell you the fees, because all these calls are recorded for quality assurance, I want you to tell them, okay, I'm going to explain that back to you. Let me know if I'm 100% right. And explain it back to them. And you will find that there are a ton of hidden fees. It's kind of like why I never recommend buying mutual funds. They're a scam. Buy ETFs instead, because the fees are much, much lower. All right. Rose, how are you? Rose wrote, hope you had a lovely Thanksgiving as well. It's great to hear from you. Rose was in my first MBA class back in 2019. She's from the great state of Virginia. God bless you. Good to hear from you always. Okay. All right, next up, JM wrote, I saw your video on how to read the FT for free. At Financial Times, that's right, yeah. If you have a library card, you can read the FT, Wall Street Journal, Economist, etc. for free by logging in to your local library. That's smart. I didn't know that. I used to go to the library to read those for free. I didn't know you could do that online either. Huh, interesting. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah. All right, next up, EB94. I wrote, hi, Chris. I just enrolled in your MBA program. Thank you. And you wrote, I had a very broad question. What sectors of business or industry do you think will see exponential growth in the next decade? Yeah, I still think that software is eating the world. And that's something that Mark Andreessen, who's a venture capitalist I've met, I've been on a board with him before in the past too. He's been saying for about a decade now. Software is eating the world. So what I want you to do is I want you to look at sectors that have not yet been disrupted by technology, okay, and software in particular. And those are usually more regulated industries that are slightly being deregulated now. So I would say financial services and the healthcare sector. Those are regulated markets that are slowly being deregulated. I would look into those sectors, or just look at any sector in general that has not been Ubered, so to speak. Yeah. Okay, next up, Manas wrote, Elon is going after Apple and Android at the same time. He's also threatened to create a new phone if Twitter is removed from the App Store. Is he going way too fast, and will it be harmful in the long run? Yeah, so yesterday, Elon Musk met with Apple CEO Tim Cook, and they basically kind of said it was a misunderstanding, and they're good now. But behind the scenes, we really don't know what happened. My gut is that Apple, and this is just me speculating, that Apple was worried that you could have extremists on Twitter, which could kind of rock the boat in terms of stability in the economy, etc. Yeah. I'm glad that Apple kind of did this, postured this way, because it could kind of keep, kind of like the Senate, it's a sober second look, kind of keep Twitter in check. Now, there are people that are speculating. This is fascinating. I don't believe this, but I'm going to go down this path. You'll love this. It's interesting. People are speculating that Elon is so brilliant, he knew before he ever thought about buying Twitter that Apple and Google might want to kick Twitter off Apple and Google. And he then he knew this. Some people are speculating. This is just not my opinion, but whatever. He did this because he wants to launch his own phone. And of course, his phone is going to be powered by his own satellites, meaning internet access. Yeah. But I believe in freedom of information. I don't think it's fair that all social media platforms are Republican or Democrat. I was very careful. I always said that. I think it's important to have differing opinions. Always. Keeps governments in check. Yeah. As long as they're not hurtful opinions. Yeah. All right. Next up, Manas wrote, how do crypto options work? As I have your options course partially completed, is crypto options the same as stock options? It's very similar. In fact, Manas, if you right-click on any of the tabs there in that Excel spreadsheet I provide you with, you can unhide a certain tab and you can add cryptos to it. And I could show you that as well if you want to during office hours later today. Yeah. It's similar. Yeah. But be careful, please. All right, next up, Manas wrote, FTX and FBF were involved in laundering money in forms of cryptos alongside Zelensky. I didn't know that. Is it unfair for Ukrainian citizens in general? And when will this war finally end? Yeah. So I can't comment on what's happened with laundering and whatnot. If somebody is sending money to Ukraine to defend them, I'm always cool with that. But in terms of when will the war end? Decades. This is the Cold War part 2. And Putin's going to try to reassemble the USSR. Yeah, it's unfortunate. All right. And then Manas wrote, Fidelity is accepting cryptos. What are your thoughts? Yeah, so a couple of months ago, they basically said that you're allowed to put cryptos, a certain percent, smaller percent, in your retirement savings program, your 401k. As long as it's limited to a small amount, I think it's okay. But I wouldn't want people to go and put 90% of their retirement savings in cryptos. As I said before, from a risk management, portfolio diversification perspective, never have more than 5% of your liquid net worth in cryptos, and never have more than 0.5% of your liquid net worth in any one crypto. Yeah. Andre, how are you, man? Good to see you, brother. Okay. All right. Next up, Manas wrote, thank you for everything. My mentor, see you forever. Let's push the goalpost out. Thank you. Is Canada still in it? I don't even know if we're still in the World Cup. Yeah. All right. Next up, LA wrote, I found my passion in finance, but I moved to the United States 5 years ago, and I'm 42 years old. What most efficient path would you recommend for me to take? Yeah. It's all about networking to get informational meetings. Whenever anybody out there sees a job opening online, if you just apply for it, you're not going to get the job, and here's why. Statistically, if you see a job opening online and you apply to it, there's a 1 in 250 chance of you getting that job. And the person that gets that job almost always knows people at the company. So these are the rules. So what I want you to do is I want you to leverage LinkedIn and meet people at the company that have something in common with you. And I teach about this in my MBA program. You can go to harounmba.com to learn more. Thank you. All right. All right, next up, Mike Flynn. Hey, Mike, how are you, man? You wrote, hey, Chris, do you write your own copy or have you hired someone to write your emails and sales pages? Yeah, so I've outsourced. My CMO is somebody named Cassandra Cox. She's incredible. I've been working with her for a while. She's amazing. She's figured out an algorithm also. Not only, I outsource everything to her marketing-wise. Not only to write amazing copy, but also advertising spending. So get this. For every $1 that Cassandra Cox from Cox Creative Media, for every $1 she spends on ads for me, we make $8. She's incredible. Yeah. Okay. All right. And then you had a follow-up as well. Okay. And what I'm going to do actually is I'm going to open up Zoom right now. And you guys can ask questions over Zoom, or we can continue to type questions here. There's a bunch more there, I know. So give me 1 second to go over to Zoomy and open it up. Now, the way to join Zoom is you go to harounmba.com/Zoom. Okay, that's where you go. harounmba.com/Zoom. Okay, and let me actually go to Zoom too. All right. And if you come onto Zoom, just please make sure you mute your YouTube window. I'll launch it here. And that will start launching in the background. Okay, good. Let me select the correct camera. There we go. All right. Let me get to your next question. Sorry about that delay. All right. All right. In LA, if you're still on the call, when you talked about your finding your passion and trying to switch into finance, if you want, you can join Zoom. Completely up to you. And I can go through your LinkedIn profile and rewrite it for you in real time. Yeah. Or offer my humble suggestions and how to network. All right. And then Mike wrote here also, what are your thoughts on learning copywriting as a side hustle or career? I think it's great. I always ask myself this: in 5 years, is this career going to be more or less relevant than today? Obviously, much more relevant. Yeah, I think it's fantastic. Yeah. All right. Next up, the Berlin wrote, the Berlin's in my MBA program, started in January of this year. The Berlin wrote, good morning, Chris. Good morning to you too. The Fed will raise rates by 50 basis points this month. And Jerome said, we haven't felt the other effects of the previous hike. It's a 6 to 9 month lag of each hike is what he said. Yeah. And so the markets rallied yesterday because the Federal Reserve, in their monthly meeting, they basically told the street that, hey, inflation is not as bad as it was before. The rate of change is going negative to the extent that inflation will still go up, but a little bit less so. As a result, they're not going to raise rates by 75 basis points every month going forward. They'll probably do it 50 basis points, eventually 25 basis points. And we all know that lower interest rates in the long run means that more speculative assets like certain stocks, cryptos, etc., will go up more. And the market tends to discount 6 months ahead of time what the Fed is going to do or how the economy is going to look. So this is definitely a very positive sign, very positive sign. And the reason they're slowing down also is not just because inflation is getting a little bit less bad, but the Federal Reserve wanted to raise interest rates so that unemployment would spike, right? And that's always what they try to do, to slow down the economy. And we've had so many companies announce layoffs, especially in the tech sector. Yeah, so I agree with the lag there. Yeah. All right, Eduardo from Texas wrote, good day, Chris. Good to see you. You're Argentina 2, Mexico 0. Messi? Yeah. Great to see you, brother. Always good to see you. Okay. And then the Berlin wrote, Chris, how come Sam from FTX has not been arrested? They're still investigating, looking for more concrete evidence of fraud, I guess. Yeah, but I don't know what's going on behind the scenes. Yeah, but it could happen. But it could take a while, right? Look what happened with Elizabeth Holmes. It took forever until she actually got arrested. You know, everybody knew there were issues with her company, and now she's serving 11 years in jail. Yeah. All right. And then, and if anybody wants to join Zoom, y'all know the address. Keep typing your questions if you want. Okay. All right. Next up, Shutter Bugnerd wrote, are you using a track for that side camera, or are you doing it digitally? No, I've got it on a slider. Yeah. And it's made by a company called OMC, or One Man Crew. Yeah. So basically it's moving slowly. So this is my office here. That's the outdoors. It's raining today. Yeah. So it's on a slider. Yeah. And a lot of people use that for interviewing as well. Okay. And then Ya wrote, awesome sales lecture, Prof. Chris. Thank you. Thank you. Always good to see you. Okay. And then JM wrote, what's your opinion of Howard Marks? I find his memos very informative. I don't have a strong opinion one way or the other. I'm sorry. Yeah. Yeah. All right. Cool. And Radu, who's from Romania in my Platinum MBA program, he started in September, wrote, good morning, good evening, everyone in between. Good to see you, bud. And Diego wrote, good stuff. So 1 in 250 when applying for a job online. It's so true. Yeah, you have a 1 out of 250 shot of getting that job, which is why you have to create an amazing LinkedIn profile and network with people in that company first. Okay. All right. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to move over here to, here we go. I'm going to move over here to Zoom. And if anybody wants to join Zoom, just go to the following web address, harounmba.com/Zoom, all lowercase. Okay. And I guess while I wait for you guys to join here, speaker, gallery. You'd think I know how to use Zoom now. Gallery. Okay. And then once you guys unmute, you'll be able to ask questions here or turn on your camera. Yeah. All right. Here we go. We got Gary in the house. Gary, how are you, man?
I'm doing well. Had a good Thanksgiving and all. Thought about you, did some things that we previously had talked about. And one of my questions to you, did you get a chance to look at that documentary on Carl Icahn?
Not yet. Not yet. It's on my list for sure. For sure. And I'm recording right now. I just recorded episode 2, reaction video of Billions, and episode 3. And in one of the episodes, Bobby is going after this Yum branded company, and he's trying to take over the company doing activist investment things. So I'm talking about Icahn in that vlog a lot as well.
Oh, okay.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that. Yeah. There's a Warren Buffett one as well on HBO, which is amazing. Really, really good. Yeah. It's okay. Great. Yeah. And one of the best pieces of advice is that Warren Buffett gave on that documentary is the ability to say no. It's one of his favorite words. No.
Very important.
Yeah.
Very important.
Yeah.
And I do have one other question. I was going, because I saw that documentary, I was looking at other documentaries. And the other one was talking about, his name, the owner of the Mets.
Oh, Steve Cohen.
Yeah. So, Steve Cohen. Yes. And they talked about one thing, and I thought I'd ask you about it.
Yeah.
How do you go about using the issue of expert networks?
Yes. Okay, so
that's what got a lot of people in trouble.
Yeah. So for those who are not familiar with Steve Cohen, he ran a big hedge fund called SAC, which stands for Stephen Alexander Cohen, which got shut down by the government for insider trading activity. In fact, Bobby Axelrod on Billions is kind of modeled after him, according to some people familiar with the matter. And his hedge fund, Bobby Axelrod's, up in Connecticut before they moved it to New York in the show Billions, was modeled after Steve Cohen's as well. And I remember I went to meet with SAC years ago and they were interviewing me. Awful experience, by the way. But when I went there, I remember all I saw were Ferraris and Testarossas and 25-year-olds in the parking lot. But when I walked into his headquarters to meet with them, I had to walk through a shark. It was, that art where they have it cut in pieces in glass? Ugh. Yeah. But anyway, and shame on you, Major League Baseball, for letting Steve Cohen buy the Mets. It's America's pastime.
I thought about that. I said to myself, why would they let him in?
Yeah.
They talked about the image and all this other stuff, and They let him in.
It's money. It's like FTX. FTX sponsored all the umpires in Major League Baseball. Even the World Series, all their jerseys said FTX, which is brilliant but criminal by FTX. But FTX did it because subconsciously, America's pastime. You've got the most trusted officials wearing it, so I must trust FTX as well. Yeah, but in terms of expert networks, and so expert networks, for those of you not familiar with it, it's firms like Gerson Lehrman, the GLG group. What they'll do is hedge funds will pay them a lot of money, and they'll let you talk to people that know a lot of stuff about different markets. So, for example, they call me all the time. And they GLG firms like that will call me and say, Chris, we'll pay you $200 per call if you talk about the ed tech market with hedge funds. And I won't do it because I don't want to share information that might be proprietary about publicly traded companies, et cetera. So I remember I worked at a big hedge fund called Citadel. We were not allowed to use them, and we could only talk to people that worked at private companies, not public companies, right? So I think it's criminal. I think that they should not be allowed. I think talking to experts that work at private companies is fair, but not publicly traded companies, because you're basically buying insider information if it's not regulated and if you're not doing it right. Yeah. Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
Good.
But when it comes to Steve Cohen buying the Mets, it's money talks. As much as America is baseball is America's pastime, money always talks. It's sad. It's sad. Yeah. I love MLB as an organization, but I love them a little bit less once Steve Cohen bought the Mets.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. And what he did, actually, I have a lot of friends that work for Steve Cohen over the years. What he did was no email that came in would go to him. If you sent it to him, he wouldn't see it until his lawyer saw it. And also, no email sent from him would get sent out until his lawyers reviewed it first. And so
that sounds like billions.
Exactly. Well, dude, it's what these crooked it's what these billionaires do at these hedge funds, right? They're not all bad. There's lots of very good ones. But what they do is they have their army of pawns or analysts do all the dirty work so that they're insulated. Yeah. Yeah. It's not fair. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I've seen it in action to the extent that I've visited friends of mine in jail. Yeah. Now, when I worked at hedge funds, and I won't say which ones, but there were certain expert networks that my boss wanted me to call, and I did a call with them, and I heard insider information on stock. I won't say which hedge fund. And I went to my boss, and I said, I don't feel comfortable with this. I don't want to talk to this person anymore, and we have to put this stock on the restricted list so we don't transact on it for at least 30 days. And they agreed. Yeah. Yeah. But most people won't do that. A lot of people are unethical. They're chasing money, and they feel like they're above the law. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. In fact, in the documentary on Steve Cohen, one of the people there said that they sat in for Rajamanam, and he said he was sitting at and a guy called up and said, I'll just say Apple. It's not even that. Oh, Apple's going to have this, and this. You got 6 minutes. And he didn't know what to do. So he said, the thought was, do I buy? Or if I don't buy, I miss out. So he said, I bought.
Yeah.
And I was like, well. And he said the stock went.
Yeah.
The announcement came out and went up.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Anytime. So the rule is anytime you hear a piece of information that hasn't been publicly disclosed over the internet to everybody, if you hear information before something's been publicly disclosed and you transact on it, or you tell somebody to transact on it, you can go to jail. Mm-hmm. And it's what happened with Martha Stewart as well. She was she went to Club Fed or a women's jail in New Jersey for a year and a half. Yeah. And behind the scenes, according to people familiar with the matter, what happened was the SEC was investigating her, and she was not very polite to them. And so you got to be polite to regulators. Yeah.
That's a wise recommendation. I used to be a regulator at one time.
Yeah. Oh.
And so I always tell people the best way to deal with the government is a lot of times if you got something up, go to them before they come to you.
Yes.
Or if they come to you, mea culpa, and make their lives happier. In other words, don't attack them and all that.
Yes.
Because they're human beings.
Yes.
And sometimes they would want to destroy you.
Yes. Yes, it's so true. Another thing I'll say is if anybody out there works at a hedge fund or any firm, and there's problems with your career, and you might get into trouble, and the company you work at says, "Don't worry, we have a lawyer to help you." Get your own lawyer always, because that company is protecting itself. Right? The lawyer has a bias. Don't trust them. Get your own lawyer as well. You can always do it for cheap by going to LegalZoom.com.
That's true.
Yeah. It's killing me. I'm so tempted to say a million lawyer jokes right now, but I won't do it. Yeah. But I will say, and if you're a civil rights lawyer, then I love you. Or if you represent me, you're cool. But I don't know, man. Are you are lawyers jerks before law school, or is that something they teach you in law school?
I guess from my perspective is this, because I was, like I said, regular, I was in D.C. I was located there, and we had something like 7 law schools surrounding D.C.
Yeah.
And so basically, we had a lot of graduates, and so there were a dime a dozen. So they would come out of school and making $40,000, $50,000, with all that debt. And the issue is that many of them, and this is my own personal opinion, are not that sharp. They really are not that sharp. Yeah. You hired, and I did hire some very good law firms. You would hire law firms that you wouldn't want to go up against.
Yeah.
and all that. But they definitely have ethical problems. I remember I was on the board of another company, and they were involved in accreditation, and the lawyers got involved. They didn't want to. I said, wait a minute. I'm a CPA. I got to adhere to the AICPA's Code of Ethical Conduct. Otherwise, they're going to look at these numbers as it's me.
Yeah.
And so I said, the only way to guide me through this process was constantly reviewing the Code of Ethical Conduct.
Yeah.
So that I would not run afoul and all that. And plus, I knew the lawyers represented the company. They wouldn't represent me.
Totally.
And I didn't want to be, quote, associated with what was going on.
And there's an ethical issue, too. If you're a lawyer and you have to represent somebody who's lying, and they're lying, but you're getting paid a lot, should you still represent them?
That's nothing used to get me. I said, why are these guys representing this crud? He's lying.
Doesn't make any sense.
He's hurt a lot of people.
Yeah.
But then they're smiling and with it all conversing together. And we're sitting in the courthouse and all that. And I'm like,
it's crazy. But what I will say, I've learned a lot of things from lawyers too that I've worked with over the years. Especially when I worked in the hedge fund industry. A lot of former SEC employees, they understand event-driven hedge funds, so they work in hedge funds now too. I learned from them a couple things. Number one, contracts. Right, because you learn about contracts, which is really important for business. Another thing
CPAs, they also have to learn the contracts, but you're not going to pass the CPA exam.
Yeah, exactly. And also, how to ask questions without leading the witness, which I've used a lot in business, which helps. So, for example, I know you're a New York Yankees fan, but instead of me saying, "Tell me how badly you want the Yankees to sign Judge," right, which is going to lead you to say, yes, I want to sign it. I would say, what are your thoughts on Judge return to the Yankees? So you wouldn't lead the witness, right? And that worked out a lot, really well for me, actually, when I was interviewing CEOs. Or CFOs even. I would say, how should we think about operating margin targets in the long run, and what are the potential levers? Yeah. Mm-hmm. Instead of saying, tell me how good operating margins are going to be, or whatever. Yeah. So I kind of learned that. Yeah, we got Carolyn in the house. How are you, Carolyn?
Hi, Chris. I'm good, thank you.
Excellent. How's married life? You got married in Nova Scotia, was it? 6 months ago or so?
Yes.
Yeah.
Nova Scotia. I'll show you some picture when I get them.
Sure.
Maybe at Christmas.
Sure.
And I was good. Rob, my husband, is here today. He's on the boat and sometimes at home.
Yeah.
I wanted to share some experience that I had about buying stock. So
sure.
A few weeks ago, I bought my first stock, ever. So I got 5 positions. Mm-hmm. And So as soon as I bought them, like 2 days later, they went down 30%.
Oh,
30.
I'm sorry. Sorry to hear that. Yeah.
Ouch. No, it's okay.
Yeah.
So I didn't panic or anything.
Yeah.
I was an emotional. That's what I have in common with Elon Musk. That's about it.
Yeah.
Anyway, but the US one went back. Now I'm just at above zero. And the Canadian, I'm confident that they're gonna come back. It's I think it's really a broken stock. The one I got, the Canadian one, and it's creeping up, but I'm sure it's gonna be good. And what's good about it? It's most of them have dividend.
Mm-hmm.
So I've been getting my 7% dividend average.
Oh, that's pretty. Is it a big Canadian bank?
No, what I have is I've got REITs in Canada. It's Innovalis.
Okay.
Innovalis, it's REITs, which is Canadian, but they have their own offices in Europe, in France, Spain.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. And let me just one quick. So that's a REIT. It's a real estate investment trust. It's a way of investing in real estate by buying a ticker. And the rule is that 90% of the profits have to be paid out in terms of a dividend. And so 7% dividend is very healthy. One thing I'll warn people about, though, is if you look at any stock or REIT and the dividend yield is like 30 or 40%, don't buy it. Do your research first, because that dividend is not sustainable. That's what the market is saying. Yeah. Okay, go on, please.
Yeah. So anyway, so that one, actually, the investor got out of it because they are selling a building in December, and because under French rules, they had to evict all the tenants in order to sell. So they were losing, of course, rent, So investor got out because of that news, and also maybe because the office work, people working online, whatever. But being from France, I know that people over there, they don't work online like they do here. It's very different because they don't have big houses, and also there is a trust issue. That's a culture thing.
Yeah.
They don't trust the employee the way people trust them here. So, anyway, I'm confident that's going to go back in January. And also what I did, I bought more when I went down. So then my share price is lower. It's 5.8 instead of when I bought it was 7.9.
Okay. So
I learned that. That's really cool because now I'm $1, away from neutral. So
awesome.
It's fascinating. I can see how the money machine, the stock market can be, because I got 2,300 of that stock. So if it goes like $2, like I'm making like 5,000. Wow, it's like crazy, right?
Oh, it's fun. And make sure to put it in your RRSP, which is the Canadian 401k, of course. Yeah.
Well, actually, we have the TSFA, tax-free saving account.
Oh, great.
So it's per person until now it's 81,000, I think, and this year they're gonna maybe allow 6,000 extra.
Yeah.
So that's tax free, like that's the best. So that's where I'm gonna put the money for me and my husband. So like 170,000, and that's it. I want to create an income, like 7%, whatever, like income for monthly income for. To buy the bread and the butter.
That's great. That's awesome. Now, I always recommend, you're in the Silver MBA, go to EMS 4-2 and complete the 100, that's Economics Management Strategy, semester 4, class 2, and complete that 100-step template to help you understand valuation fundamentals and a distant third technical analysis. Yeah.
I know, but it's so much work for me.
It is a lot. It is a lot. And if you ever don't have time to do due diligence on stocks, I recommend just parking your money in the VOO, ticker VOO.
Yeah, I know. And in Canada, on the Toronto market, we have, it's called, it's the same thing, it's called VYV.TO, and that's the VOO. It's the same thing, except it's in Canadian dollar.
Okay, good. So the FX hit is different. Yeah. I got you. Yeah. Yeah,
and Vanguard also have an ETF, which is just bank and utilities. It's called VDY. And I'm planning. I think it's also a pretty safe investment, and it's a dividend of 4%.
Excellent. Make sure the fees are well under 0.5% for that.
Yeah, it's Vanguard, so it's very cheap.
Good. Yeah, Vanguard's the best ETF company, man.
Yeah, it's 0.21, I think, 20 cents.
Excellent. For every $100 you invest, you pay 21 pennies per year in fees. That's good.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah. And the rest I'm going to take a little more like risk. Yeah. I saw Caterpillar. You were right about Caterpillar. They went double in 2 weeks.
Yeah. So Caterpillar, ticker CAT, similar to Komatsu, it's an industrial stock. And industrial stocks, what happens is the best time to buy them is when the PE is at nosebleed levels. And the reason I say this is because they're very cyclical, right? So they make a ton of money when things are going well, and they lose a ton of money when things are awful. So when things are awful for them and their valuation sucks, that's when you buy. I know it's a different way to think about it. Yeah.
So what is a PE down? It's does it look like the PE?
Yeah, it might not even have a PE. Like what happens is when the economy, they probably have a PE right now. It's probably pretty high, I'm guessing, but historically speaking, in big industrial companies, cyclical companies like Caterpillar, their PE can go negative as well. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And so what you want to do is you want to look at previous economic cycles and look at price to revenue. What was the bottom price to revenue for them historically? And people do that with semiconductor stocks too, like Intel. They look at the previous historical bottom from a price to revenue perspective, because earnings don't matter as much when times are bad for these companies.
Well, I also have a basic question. I don't know if I can share my screen. It's on Yahoo.
Yeah, go ahead, please.
It's about reading like a number. What is sharing here? Here. Sorry, here. Okay. Oh, here. Okay. Then you cannot see, I guess.
Yeah.
Wait, can you see?
Yep, go for it. Yeah, just zoom in a bit.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Zoom.
Actually, it's good. We can see it. It's good. Yeah.
Okay. See the key executive there. So the number here, 497.04K. What K is kilo is 30, I guess. K is like kilo.
Yeah. So he makes $497,000, probably Canadian. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, because often it's in million, and then you have it. It was computing the .04.
Yeah. And then that's his base salary. Todd's the CEO of that company, or the president of that company, and then exercise. Okay. Exercise would mean options that he's exercised. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Cool. Thank you.
Yeah. Of course. Yeah. But good for you for doing research first. That's awesome.
Yeah. And some company like, for example, I was looking at some stock ABR. It's a REIT as well. It's and the profile.
Yeah. Let's see what the yield is first.
So So these guys it's like 2+7. It's like so many million to run the top guy. You would invest in company like where they spend so much money in their top guy? I don't know.
Yeah, I would. Okay, so that number looks a little bit too high to just be a base salary, and so you always have to question the data you see when it comes to executive compensation and financial statements on Yahoo Finance. Always go right to the source. So what I would do in this case for this company, Arbor Realty Trust, I would go to sec.gov and I would look at the annual reports and find out if that is correct, the salary. It could be salary and bonus. Yeah.
Okay. Because it's huge, right? Like, spending so much money in there, paying their guys.
It's a little egregious. But if that CEO or president in this case, Todd, hit certain benchmarks, maybe perhaps he got bonuses. And nobody cares how much the CEO makes if stockholders are making a fortune. But usually the big bonuses people usually get, it's not cash bonus, it's usually stock-based bonuses. Yeah.
Okay.
And that's why a lot of these billionaires that own publicly traded companies, or they own a big stake in them, sometimes they'll make a couple $1 billion a year, like Larry Ellison from Oracle, ticker ORCL, in terms of stock grants. Yes, more shares are issued, which, yes, is dilutive to the market, but at the same time, nobody cares because the stock's going up a lot. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay, cool. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. I love talking about this stuff, though. Yeah. I see you got Leonard Cohen there as well. Yeah, great Canadian.
Yeah. I got that. One stock I bought was Spotify. I
Sure.
just Spotify. I love it. And anyway, I bought it at 90, which I thought was good, and then went down to 70.
Yeah.
And oh my God, it was like
Yeah.
But now it's back to 80, right?
Yeah.
And then they send that the wrap for your 20. That was really cool.
I love it. Yeah. And Neil Young, another great Canadian, pulled off of Spotify too. I remember that. Yeah. Cool.
Yeah, but he's back.
He's back on it now. Okay.
Yeah, I think so.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
And Laura Cohen covered. It's amazing. It's such a cool album. It's so good.
Yeah, I love Leonard Cohen. He's great. Great Canadian poet. God bless him. Yeah, he's one of our crown jewels. Yeah. Cool. Well, thanks for showing us that. Okay, let me go here to...
Thank you, Chris.
Of course. Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks for showing that to us. Okay. So Radu from Romania wrote, the ability to say no with respect to Warren Buffett. That's still a work in progress for me, but I agree it's important to do. Absolutely, especially as you get older and you're younger in your career. I'm an old man. You don't have time for everything. So sometimes no just means not replying to an email. Yeah, you don't have to take every meeting. Yeah. Okay. All right, next up, Eduardo wrote, hey, Chris, what are your thoughts about some people saying that all financial markets, crypto, stocks, etc., are going to zero to reset? No, I don't think that. No, I have confidence in the equity markets in most developed countries. I don't think that's going to happen. Cryptos, I don't think they'll all go to zero. Yeah. But if people keep saying that, or say that a lot with cryptos, then I'm going to start buying in size for the first time in years. Yeah. Okay, cool. All right, Gary and Carolyn, you guys have more questions?
Not actually, not today. I don't. Okay. Well, I could. Yeah, I'd love to listen to you about stock, of course. I like BHP, the new CEO. Looks
BHP
like a good guy.
Great Australian company. Yeah.
Yeah, I think he's Canadian.
BHP? I think.
No, the new CEO.
Oh, the CEO is Canadian. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, he's a new guy.
Yeah. As interest rates come down, those cyclical stocks should do extraordinarily well. Of course, they're very heavily levered to China, so you got to look at China closely in terms of riots, etc. That's happening there. Yeah.
Yeah, the market, maybe the economy is slowing down.
Yeah, you really have to look at global growth. Yeah.
But it's going to be just for a while. Eventually, it's going to bounce back, right?
Yeah. Cyclical commodities tend to do well when China is growing very fast. Yeah. Yeah.
Wow. Okay, I have a question.
Sure.
What are your thoughts about the issue of ESGs, where companies now are reporting that, and how that is changing markets and the decisions and all that?
Yeah, that's a great question. So ESG, for those who are not familiar, that stands for environment and social governance. It means investing in stocks that don't do bad stuff, like not investing in ultra or companies that pollute. Younger generation really believes in that, and all the power to them for that as well. I don't believe, I love ESG based investing because I don't like to invest in companies they're awful polluters. Even the Catholic Church got into it this past week. Basically what the Catholic Church said was, we're going to come out with some recommendations on companies and sectors to not invest in. Yeah. So it's an ethical thing. Yeah. And it just depends also on, like for me, for example, I'll never invest in companies that manufacture marijuana. My family, my dad, my brother, they made a fortune on investing in private marijuana companies in Canada. But just for me, I think marijuana should only be legal, just my personal opinion, for medicinal purposes. Yeah. But everyone's got their own ethical mandates. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. One last question. Just
sure. Anything. Yeah.
Being that you are a former venture capitalist, when it comes to investing in non-tech or biotech type companies, in other words, I'm not going to say old school type of Rust businesses, What decisions do you? What would turn on venture capitalists to invest in?
Yeah.
I'll just say non-tech, non-bio,
Yeah.
hot type of areas. If someone approaches,
Yeah.
A VC,
Yeah.
what are the key things they look at?
Yeah, so every sector is a little bit different. So if you're looking at the retail sector, meaning restaurants or retail stores, the driver there is same store sales. So we want to see how much each store's revenue grows organically each year. You don't give credit to Starbucks for opening tons of stores. You give them credit for how much revenue grows for each store organically. We look at organic growth for other types of companies too. So hotel companies, we look at RevPAR, which stands for revenue per available room, right? How much does each room increase revenue per year? We don't give Hilton credit, for example, or hotel companies credit for opening hotels because that's very CapEx intensive. When it comes to telecom companies, for example, which I guess is kind of tech, but telecom companies, we look at ARPU, average revenue per unit. How much does subscription fees grow for each unit per year? So we're always looking at organic growth. Now, venture capital firms also like to see explosive growth with minimal expenses. Okay, and that's one of the reasons why we haven't seen a semiconductor go public in decades, right? A lot of people don't want to invest in these things because you have to build a massive plant and you have inventory issues, etc. And that's why people want to invest in software companies, because software, there's minimal expenses and you can see incredible growth. And the same thing with my company as well. I don't have any full-time employees, and I'm levered to the upside as well. And what I teach also in the venture capital bootcamp part of the MBA degree program in the third semester, E3-1, Entrepreneurship Semester 3, Class 1, is how to start a company with minimal expenses and to use OPM or other people's money, meaning raising money from high net worth investors and certainly not from banks. But we definitely look at growth. So what we look at is we look at, first of all, the size of the total addressable market. Right? You never want to invest in a company in a tiny market because if you get 100% share of tiny market, it doesn't matter. So we look at total addressable market, right? And then we look at obviously revenue growth, profitability longer term. And we spent a lot of time looking at the management team. And 2 weeks ago, on my last weekly call, I interviewed a guy named Haroun who started a company called Udely, which is a software.
I remember that one.
Yeah, and so he's the type of CEO I like to invest in. Now, I've not invested in his company. I'll never invest in a company and interview the person on my channel. It doesn't make sense. It's not fair. It's not ethical. But he's the type of person I love to invest in. He's a lot like Mark Benioff or Richard Branson. He's incredibly passionate, a great salesperson. And we want that in an entrepreneur. And that's why he was able to raise millions of dollars from the same venture capital firm in the Seattle area that was one of the first investors in Jeff Bezos and Amazon. Because he gets you excited about the product. And if his product or his market changes a lot, he can still get investors and customers excited about what his product might become longer term.
Yeah, he was a good guy.
Yeah, he's amazing.
And cool idea. Very good. I wrote it down on my post-it, so I can check it out.
He's a good guy. And Matt Lacousse, who works with me, my chief creative officer, my partner here, is great. He actually did a lot of his videos as well. He worked for him as well. Yeah, Matt's got his own company too.
Yeah. Talking about hotel, hospitality. I'm thinking about Airbnb, and I came across some interesting facts about Airbnb. Our friend, they live in a cottage country in Quebec, and so cottage on the lake. It's not crowded, but the municipality in Quebec sent them a letter that they are not allowed to rent through Airbnb anymore.
Wow!
Can you believe that?
That's not fair, man. And like when I bought this house here, like this room here, I bought this house years ago. It's an expensive area, but good school district. This room here was for Airbnb. And so I rented out 2 rooms actually with separate entrances from the house. And that more than covered the mortgage. And I always recommend that people want to buy a house. Look to see if you can, first of all, check to see if you're allowed, per the town's protocols, to use Airbnb. And if so, try to buy a house if you can that has a separate entrance, or create a separate entrance, which I built myself here. So that will more than offset the mortgage. Yeah. And a little side note here, just because I have a lot of love for Ukraine. If anybody wants to, I think one of the best ways to donate to Ukraine is to go to Airbnb and rent places in Ukraine. Yeah. And obviously you don't have to go. But
Yeah,
it just
I
helps.
know people did that. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's cool.
Yeah.
Good
It's a
idea.
nice thing. Yeah. It's cool. Awesome. Cool.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. So I got to wrap this up in a couple of minutes. Question here from Diego. Hey, Diego wrote, how often are these live streams? They're every single week. There wasn't one last week though because of Thanksgiving. Yeah. So every week, please like, comment, subscribe, all that stuff. My marketing team always wants me to say that. But it's every single Thursday at 8 a.m. Pacific time. Yeah. And it's 2 hours long. And then once it ends at 10 a.m. Pacific time, what I do is I do a Zoom call with my Silver MBA students. And Gary, you can stay on as well, please. I always love having you with us, please. And for those of you in my Silver MBA program, you can just go to the first lecture in the Silver MBA, and you'll see the link to the Zoom call that we have every single Thursday from 10 a.m. until 11. And if you're in my Gold and Platinum programs, we have a 2-hour call every Thursday from 11:20 to 1:20. To learn more about my MBA program, you can always go to harounmba.com. Yeah. Thanks. And Diego wrote, thank you. We'll tune in next week. Thank you. Thank you. Awesome. Great. Excellent. All right. So I'm gonna wrap up this call. Gary and Carolyn, stay there. I'm gonna turn off Zoom, but I'll come back just after 10. And then yeah, for those of you on the call, thank you. I'm gonna put you guys on mute here. Actually, you guys can keep talking to each other if you want to. I'm just gonna mute myself. Yeah. 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 But I want to thank you all for attending this week's webcast, week number 210. I'll see you next week and every week forever. I'm here to humbly help you in any way I can with any finance, investing, entrepreneurship, career development questions you have. And as with all my weekly calls, what I do is I end with a video, a life-changing video, which I licensed from the Silicon Valley Historical Association. It's a short 1-minute video on Steve Jobs that is life-changing. Thank you all, and I'll see you all next week. Thank you.
When you grow up, you tend to get told that the world is the way it is, and your life is just to live your life inside the world, try not to bash into the walls too much, try to have a nice family life, have fun, save a little money. But life, that's a very limited life. Life can be much broader once you discover one simple fact, and that is everything around you that you call life was made up by people that were no smarter than you. And you can change it. You can influence it. You can build your own things that other people can use. And the minute that you understand that you can poke life and actually something will, if you push in, something will pop out the other side, that you can change it, you can mold it. That's maybe the most important thing, is to shake off this erroneous notion that life is there and you're just going to live in it, versus embrace it, change it, improve it, make your mark upon it. I think that's very important. And however you learn that, once you learn it, you'll want to change life and make it better, because it's kind of messed up in a lot of ways. Once you learn that, you'll never be the same again.